gosh. Okay, this is another topic. Oh my gosh. So you know how in many Eastern European countries far right groups are gaining ground. Far right reactionary groups are getting populist groups are gaining ground. The Fidesz party in Hungary has been ruling for quite a long time now. The Law and Justice Party, which thank goodness is not in power anymore, but is still looking to come back into power, banking on the population being disappointed with the current coalition not keeping its promises. We have the situation in Slovakia, the government which is openly anti-Ukraine and mocked citizens for doing a fundraiser on their own in the face of their own government not wanting to aid Ukraine in any way. There's a bunch of stuff happening. And while we're at it, there's also the whole situation in Moldova, Georgia, a lot of things that are affecting the entire region. And so there's a pretty right-wing populist party that has also emerged in Romania. There's a far-right presidential candidate that has emerged in Romania. And this is where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean horrible. Because the current center-left Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu has is in the third place when it comes to the first round of the presidential election. And this is where I have to explain something. There's been a big controversy. There has been a big controversy around these elections because one of the candidates has been barred from taking part. There was a candidate, we're not gonna go deep into that person's identity, but there's been a person that wanted to run for president, but they were excluded from participation because their views were anti-constitutional and they were pro-Russian. And even the detractors of this candidate were against this move of excluding them from the election outright. But apparently, and this is where it gets comical, the current prime minister is behind this move, and his logic was as follows. If I let this person run, the far right vote might become divided between this person that we excluded and the far right party leader Georgescu. If we separate the far right vote, then we might end up in a situation where the far right vote is separated between two candidates, and that means that there's a candidate that the current prime minister was afraid of winning, and he was afraid that Elena Lasconi of the center right would win more votes than the far right candidate, the far right candidate, because he was sure that he would be number one, but he wanted to choose who his competition would be. He did not want it to be Elena Lasconi, so he decided to consolidate the far right vote in the hands of Georgescu. So he would be his competition and not Elena Lasconi. That was the thought process. Everything clear so far? You understand what's happening? The current prime minister thought, if if I don't let the far right vote to divide, then I will be running against this guy and not that person Elena. I don't want to run against her. So I want this guy to beat her. And to do that, I will not let the far right vote to be divided between two candidates. Yeah? We all understand? So far so good? But what ended up happening is, and we will read it from the article that I've got here. What actually ended up happening is this. Far-right Ukraine aid critic takes surprise lead in Romanian presidential election. Because yes, this whole stupid plan, of course, backfired. It backfired spectacularly. What actually ended up happening is this. Georgescu, the far right politician, is leading the polls with 22.94%, the person that the current prime minister wanted to run against. But what he did not expect, and roughly 99.95% of the vote counted, what he did not expect, that he would not actually be the top dog, followed by two pro-Western candidates, Elena Lasconi of the center-right Save Romania Union, USR, at 19.17, and center-left Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu at 19.15%. He ended up being third place. He ended up third place. He ended up losing to the guy that he wanted to go against, and he ended up still losing to the person that he did not want to go against. He ended up third place, below both of them. So I think it's fair to say his plan has backfired spectacularly, because if he actually left that other candidate, allowed them to go to compete in the presidential election, and if the far right vote was actually divided, then there is a chance that he'd actually be squaring off against Elena Lasconi. But it is what it is. Great plans sometimes do not work as well as we'd like. And this is an amazing example of that. This is the person that's been banned. George Simeon, the leader of the far-right Our Alliance, who has been banned from entering Ukraine over systematic anti-Ukraine activities, is projected to come in fourth with 13.87%. The second round of the vote is scheduled to take place on December 8th. The surprise outcome signals a possible shift within a country at NATO's eastern frontier that has been staunchly supportive of its Ukrainian neighbors. Throughout the full-scale war, Romania's head of state has a significant influence in some areas such as foreign policy. Georgescu has previously called for an end to Romania's support for Ukraine and lambasted the presence of a NATO missile defense station in Romania as a shame on diplomacy. So yeah, we possibly might get an anti-Ukraine guy in Romania, which is a very, very bad thing right now. The last thing Ukraine needs when it's basically at the critical stage of the war, when the situation at the front is, quite frankly, well, really difficult, let's just say. The last thing that it needs is a government that is anti-aid to Ukraine, that does not support Ukraine. Because between round number one and round number two, Romania is also having its general elections. And there's a chance that a far right party might get a lot of votes, unfortunately, because the presidential election serves as a boost to parties. If a far right candidate is being popular in the presidential race, there's a pretty big chance that also a far right party might gain traction in the general elections, as unfortunate as it is. Romania took a decisively pro-Ukraine stance under Siolacu, an outgoing President Klaus Iohannis, providing military, humanitarian, and economic support. The country is a key conduit for Ukraine's agricultural exports and has recently provided Ukraine with a Patriot air defense system. So, a really strong ally thus far. Romania shares a 610-kilometer border with Ukraine. Russian drone wreckage has been found on the Romanian side of the border on several occasions following Moscow's drone strikes against Ukraine, forcing Bucharest to ramp up security measures in the area. Georgescu, who has a strong presence on the TikTok social network, was considered a marginal candidate by previous surveys and was not often listed among the top presidential hopefuls. He ran as an independent candidate while a former member of the AUR. Georgescu left the party in 2022 after being criticized by his fellow party members who said his overly pro-Russian and anti-NATO views damaged the party's image. Georgescu also lauded Romania's World War II era fascist leader Ion Antonescu as a national hero. Wow. He served as a special rapporteur in the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights and worker as an expert in sustainable development and environment sector. So there you have it. The reason why I'm talking about this, the reason why I think it's important is you could say there's a battle going on right now in the region. There's a battle and there's a choice that countries are making in the region. And the choice is West, European Union versus Ruski Mir, basically. And Russia is doing its best to sway as many countries as it possibly can to the Ruski Mir side. It has meddled in Moldova. It has definitely meddled in Georgia. It probably would not complain if Romania would go the road of anti-aid to Ukraine and maybe pro-Russian policy. Russia would definitely not complain about that. Slovakia is right now pretty anti-Ukraine. This has been my big fear. This has, Slovakia happened basically at a similar time that Poland did. And the big fear was that the law and justice would win and also that Slovakia would be anti-Ukraine. But thank God, law and justice went away. And that is why I really wanted to talk about Romania. Because it seems like through overcomplicated plans of a certain current prime minister, we're getting a result that nobody really wants. So there you have it. That is Romania.